in time!
Festergut is the other boss you can do first in the Plague Quarters. This boss can be solo tanked by a Protection Paladin. Moreover, this boss has a few mechanics to watch out, and this will be the positions during the fight. Take note that melee DPS should stack either on the left or the right leg of the boss. His main mechanic is Gas Spore. The boss targets 3 players with an orange spore on top of their head, which they will go to these positions in the diagram shown, and all players will need to stack with the spore closest to them to acquire the debuff in order to avoid the pungent blight mechanic, which will be discussed later. Players need to have 3 stacks of debuff from the spore, and once the spore disappears, all players need to go back to their positions. His second mechanic is connected with the main mechanic, which is Inhale Blight. During the fight, Festergut inhales the gas inside the room, which increases his damage and attack speed. Once he reaches 3 stacks, he will do Pungent Blight, which does a lot of shadow damage and kills player who doesn't have 3 stacks of the gas spore debuff. Another mechanic is Malleable Goo. During the fight, Professor Pictureside will throw Malleable Goo to random players, which is marked with a green puddle on the ground and can be dodged. And this is why melee DPS should stand on either foot of the boss, so that if the Malleable Goo targets someone on their right foot, they can just move towards the left foot, or vice versa. As for the tanks, the boss will apply a stacking debuff called Gastric Bloat. Once the debuff reaches 10 stacks, the tank will explode and causing a raid wipe mechanic. To combat this, it's either you have 2 tanks, which they will switch tanking before reaching 10 stacks, or having a single Prot Paladin tank who can use a Divine Shield and use the macro /cancel aura Divine Shield to reset the stacks once it reaches 9 stacks. Please note, if you are using the latter, the Prot Paladin should not use Divine Protection in order to avoid Forbearance debuff so that he or she can use Divine Shield. Lastly, Valga's mechanic is also present here, which works as the same as Rotface, where all range DPS should spread as much as possible. In summary, this boss is just a DPS race where everyone should stack during Spore, DPS should avoid Malleable, and range DPS should spread when there are no spores to avoid Valgas. Meanwhile, the tanks should use their cooldowns when the boss has 3 stacks of Inhaled Blight and avoid reaching 10 stacks of Gastric Bloat.
Daddy.